Well, Dave will always be with us. You know that. Everyone here has memories of him, I know. I met him later in life. He had many bad experiences and some really good experiences, like all of us. He often spoke of them, and I realized that they were the things that made Dave Dave to a great extent. You have your stories, and certainly you were part of him as he was part of you. And so it was with us. So, with love. This is a little bit rambling, some parts. I timed it should be 10 minutes, so it'll be okay. We were introduced by a mutual friend after they had a little boxing match. And his friend thought, well, you guys are mature, might have something of interest in mind. And, well, he's right. Actually, we had more differences than you would imagine, but that was part of the discovery and fun. Opening up to a new person. A few years prior to our meeting, Dave lived in Baltimore with his partner, Dave Sabarat, I believe it's pronounced. Dave. Well, suddenly one day he was in the kitchen and he had a heart attack and died on the spot. Dave was alone since he came from Chicago, born and raised here, but moved to Baltimore and with his partner, had a good job. And then Dave was shattered. Here he is in the city, doesn't really know anybody, no money, the arrangements, the whole thing, it just was overwhelming. He spoke of that. So that, and I think the most difficult times of his life was the fact that he had two marriages that did not work out. But this was a crowning blow on top of it. He was absolutely alone in the world. Well, he did move back to Chicago, as we all know. And shortly after that, we met. Well, at that time, he was scrambling for a job, and he managed to get one at Dunkin' Donuts. Ugh! It's a little store, and well, they had several stores in that group. Well, the only benefit was they had donuts, because it was right next to the donut shop. So that was brief. And then he was out of work, and then through Cheryl, that's, for they don't know, his cousin. Known each other since birth, yes. She said, well, with your talents and all that, your background, your credentials, I suggest you try this company, which was LifeLink. And so he did. And there he met some really nice people, especially Tanya. And they became friends. But she being a boss, it had to be, as a matter of fact, went on trips together. Back at the office, oh, hi, how you doing? So it was a great friendship and lasted, and she went on a number of trips with Dave, with me, and with Dan Krask, who's a friend who was in St. Louis, moved to Chicago, and they had their apartment upstairs, Dave and Dan. Well, unfortunately, as time went by, the work situation at LifeLink became a strain. Dave was a man who liked to be independent, and he could be. He had his professional skills. He liked to study, make decisions, and carry through. That didn't work so well with the upper management. They had their own ideas. And the politics of the office, it built for years. And finally, got to the point where he was in such a bad emotional state. I said, "You are retiring." He said, "But I can't get anything for a year. I'm too young." I said, "Yeah, but you won't live till that unless you retire now." I said, "We can get by. A little tight here, but yeah, it's doable." And then I tried to reassure him that we had sufficient funds that he never need worry for the rest of his life. I said, "You've got security. This is the building. It's paid for. Maintenance." I signed over some securities. They're definitely in your name, both our names. Modest, but there. And I said, the way the trust is set up, you're covered with that too. So then with Social Security, I said, basically, you're fine for the rest of your life. But there's one thing that I couldn't factor in. The trauma he went through when in Baltimore and his partner died, the loss, being alone. And too frequently there was an obsession with my dying first. Well, God took care of that. But as you know, and Toddy would know, and there are very personal discussions, and we covered that, he admitted, he said he would not survive if I wasn't there. So, "Dave, just quit. You're going to be okay." And he did. It took a good year before he started to get back to a calm state. And, yeah. So much for a minuscule background. More pleasant thoughts along here. Most of you know this. Some might be a small revelation. And certainly I could stand, and some of you could too, and talk for a couple hours about Dave and the good times. Well, you know the good times. I'm hanging some of the things here that you might not have been aware of or that much. Probably the happiest smile I ever saw was one day he said, "I'm a grandpa." His reaction, I can't repeat it. It was a highlight of his life. You know so well, Dave enjoyed travel. It was the great escape for him. The mundane everyday and worries and everything, like when he got out of town, it was just like, doesn't exist, which it should be for a vacation. So he loved to travel when possible. We took a trip together, and eventually he branched out, and he had friends in England, so he would go to meet with Frank and his wife once a year, and that was a highlight. He did that 3 or 4 times, 5 times? Oh, anyway. But every year, planning for it, very important, very interesting. And then his getting back, well, he was floating for a week after that, so it was a great escape. Dave and I also went down to Georgia to see Ron and Bill and visit with them. And that was a paradise for him because nice, warm, southern evenings in a beautiful veranda. In the peace and quiet, the balmy, warm temperatures, which of course he loved. it was just the greatest release for him to go down there. Of course, he did other travels. He certainly got around. He went to at least 11 different countries. And probably wouldn't know it, but he actually did study in Denmark for about a year, I guess it was. So he enjoyed that very much, and occasionally spoke of it. We were there together, but just at the airport, so it didn't mean much. Gardening, little points, not many left. That was an annual event. Planning for it. He would plan for it. Then he'd shop for it. Then he'd plan some more and shop some more and shop some more. And he went, then the planting, and then his taking care of the stuff. And at the end, he'd get a nice batch of jalapeno peppers and 3 tomatoes. So it's just frustrating. But at least he got some return to it. But it was the joy of seeing something grow. And he controlled it. Dave, in his life, was a man who always sought for a feeling that he had his own independence and his strength, and he could function. I suppose it was an insecurity that most of us probably feel in different ways, and certainly he felt it too. So plants he could control. Other things he could escape from it. And obviously you can see where he had a problem with employment, where he had no control over, he was a puppet, intolerable, end of politics. So these are factors that bore him, and I think were affecting his health for quite a while. I don't think you are aware of the fact, not all of you. Dave had sort of a world reputation for boxing. He, well, most of you had experience, no, he was not normally, he was a little bit more on the shy side, not more introverted. But the internet, we all know, that's where you can do what you want. And he did for years. And he'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's what time they get off in that country. And so he had contacts in, of course, Great Britain, Scotland, Germany, Canada, South or Central America, as well as the States. And he gained a position of respect on the internet. He was the man to turn to for advice, for instruction, like the senior figure. But he also boxed. I'm not a boxing fan. I don't really like the thought. But I said, we're together. I better get into it. Well, I'll watch. He said, oh, you shouldn't watch. I said, I can watch it. He said, well, we'll hold off. So I actually videoed him in 2 very friendly little boxing matches. But from the rest, I know he was undefeatable in the ring. In his 60s, he'd meet a 25-year-old who said, what do you want? They play by rules. It's not just go to it. But there are rules. You know, some people say, just don't hit my face or something like that. Okay. And some get really over the edge and go for it, knock me out. Well, that's a rough community. But yeah, he could take on, and did actually take on somebody in their 20s, early 30s. And what do you want? He delivered. They could not touch him. Never. So he was very respected. I did manage to find a few of the, well, the guys I mentioned earlier had met him through boxing. And then I found another couple on his phone, and I sent them notices his passing, and their responses were very strong. And one said he wants to write something up about him, and I don't know if they even met. But the internet was a great escape for him with that. So, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's on the internet, because that's noon in Britain or whatever, or Germany or whatever country they're corresponding with. So, and a final little note. Yes, he liked cooking. Saturdays, cooking shows, Channel 11. Every Saturday. Gotta watch the cooking shows. And then cooking books. And then trying to see if the ingredients were available or affordable. And cooking up new dishes, interesting. Half the time, he'd make the dish, he said, not bad, I can make it better next time. He rarely repeated, though, because there were so many recipes to try, so he didn't repeat that too often. I've avoided going to any serious things that might be difficult for all of you. And I'd be rambling too much. So, here we are. Dave is at peace. His partner's ashes are with him. They're united finally. That's got to be a happy scene. My grave is going to be next to his, and my late wife's ashes will be with me. So, he'll live in our hearts till we all meet again. Cheryl, it's your floor.
I am Cheryl Warren, and David was my cousin, whom I considered a brother all of our lives. On February 14th in 1952, when he was born, Winston Churchill was Prime Minister, Harry Truman was President, the Winter Olympics opened in Oslo, Norway. The top TV show was Winner Takes All. Really? The top books were Catcher in the Rye, and didn't we all have to read that turkey in high school? I did the Cliff Notes, by the way, I'd never read it. And The Caine Mutiny, which turned out to be a really good movie. Top songs were by Patti Page and Ray Anthony. And on that day, 266,350 babies besides David were born in the world. So, can you imagine all of them crying at once? And the number of diapers? The astrological sign for David was Aquarius. The February birthstone, and here we go, is amethyst. The flower is the violet. I am purple. Purple also stands for royalty. We felt we were better than people. He was christened Carl David Steers, but he preferred not to use his baptismal name. He's the only son of Carl and Marilyn Steers, brother to Lisa, nephew to Al and Joan, my mother, whom he called Auntie Mame. And if you had ever met my mother, she is the world's first hippie. And for my 16th birthday, she took me to a hot mink party. This just goes to show you what kind of person she is. She's still around. She's in Arizona. She's the oldest grandson of Alfred and Inez Ostermeyer. Dave and I were very close as children because when my parents divorced, we moved in with, my brother and I moved in with my grandmother who lived 5 doors down from David and Marilyn and Carl and Lisa. And I'd go over there on Saturday mornings for breakfast, which Carl would cook, and David, as we all know, would pour ketchup on his scrambled eggs. Drove me crazy, but I guess it's a real family thing. His favorite music were the Beatles, Billy Joel, and Heart. And when I talked to my mother this weekend, she remembered that he always wanted to be a chef. Ergo, his love for cooking. He was married in '77 to Betty. They had 1 son, Joshua. Josh is married to Bobby, and they have 2 gorgeous children, Grace and Holland. Josh said that he always felt that David loved Bobby and the girls more than he loved him. David was determined, as we would discuss birthday gifts, to give the noisiest gift possible to make sure that not only my daughter was tortured, but when my kids were little, I was tortured, so he passed it on to Bobby. That's where it came from. David and Josh shared 2 important things, besides parentage and all relationships. The love of all things Harry Potter, and the love of heat. And I do not mean the weather. I mean hot sauce. And I don't mean hot sauce. I mean, you take a layer of skin and all the taste buds off, it burns down your throat, peels off that skin, and if you sweat and turn bright red, then maybe it's hot enough. Right? Oh, yeah, right. Okay, fine. So as Wayne so graciously said, he lived in St. Louis, a lot of other places, and Josh did recall the time in '97 when he told his dad he wanted to join the Navy. So Josh and Dave went to the recruiter's office. I guess he grilled that poor recruiter to death. Didn't get all the answers he wanted, so he stormed out, leaving Josh sitting in the office. And the recruiter is sort of, is he coming back? Well, David didn't go back, so the recruiter wound up driving him home. Once David came back to Chicago for the final time, I convinced him, it took a lot of work, to go work at a place where I had worked in the 80s and 90s, called LifeLink, then Consacra, and then Embrace Living Communities. I will always, us original LifeLinkers will always call it LifeLink. He was the property manager at Greencastle of Barrington and Patton House of Glenview. We always had great laughs at LifeLink's expense. And since I worked there in the 80s and 90s, I knew some of the people that still worked there, and we'd have lots of fun laughing about that. Never laughed about Tanya, though. He loved her dearly. Thank you. He really did. Loved your vacations. What surprised everyone was the fact that he did take up boxing. Many of his, as Wayne said, many of his friends are from the years that he did boxing. His trips and vacations with Wayne to London were highlights. And he seems to have been born British in a past life because he loved everything British. In 2018, I was lucky enough to have been graciously invited to join Wayne in London with David, where we had a roar of a time. Okay, the 3 of us in London, everybody watch out. Even the Queen left. She knew we were going to be there. They took me to places I had never been, because I had never been out of the United States. They were gracious and wonderful hosts in taking me to see everything I wanted to see. And they showed me the best eating places, and boy, I don't care what they say about British food, we ate really well. It was really good food. And we were always going to pubs. Please do not call it pubs. He called them pubs. Wayne and I toured the National Gallery, the Portrait Gallery, St. Martin of the Fields, and the British Museum. Where was Dave for part of this? He was back in the room boxing, of course. But I think the partner didn't show up that day.
That was the big problem. It could be that day it didn't show up.
Yeah. We all went together to Harrods, and oh my heavens, the food court, you couldn't get me out of it until the battery on my wheelchair was dying. The Princess Diana Memorial, Trafalgar Square. I couldn't have had better guides, more than willing to explore everything. The best and funniest parts of our trips were the rides on the double-decker buses, because I was in a wheelchair that had no speed control. And I'm smiling under that because I'm a member of the Century Club on I-57. And I was learning to operate the wheelchair, and Wayne and Dave are constantly guiding me so I'm not falling off sideways off the ramp as the bus lowers. And I'm laughing and telling people, please forgive me, I'm a student driver in this thing, as I run over toes. But the British people were very, very gracious, because I said, please and thank you. I'm sorry I ran over your toe. We toured the Tower of London, which was really the best. And if anybody's going to ever tour the Tower of London, rent a wheelchair first, because the docents stop everyone to let you in. I was in a wheelchair, Wayne and I, and David. They stopped everything. They stopped the moving walkway. They stopped all the people. We got to go up one side of the moving walkway. We would get to the end while I'm in my wheelchair and David and Wayne are with me. Then they stopped the other side of the moving walkway so we could see the back side of all the crown jewels and the scepters and Queen Victoria's crown, which was probably, it looked like it was really that big. And that's not usually something that's afforded to most people because they have the moving walkway going on both sides to keep traffic moving. So we were treated to something really special. And I hope you enjoyed that week as much as I did. Dave wanted to go back to London this summer if COVID would allow it, because he still has so many friends there. And we were talking one night and he says he was bored, and we got to talking about the electric guitar. So he was going to take up the electric guitar. He was just starting lessons. And he said he was going to play heavy metal music. To which I said, could we please hear Mary Had a Little Lamb first? Then you can go on to your heavy metal after you learn Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I still have my eardrums. In your program, I'm going to read a couple of poems by British, of course, authors. If you wish, read along with me. The first one is Remember Me. Remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I have turned to go yet turning stay. Remember me no more day by day. You tell me of our future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand. It will be late to counsel then or pray. Yet if you should forget me for a while, and afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts that once I had, better by far that you should forget and smile, than that you should remember and be sad. I will read something from Psalms, although David would have a fit because he didn't want all this fancy stuff. But sorry, Dave, I'm ruling the roost for this 5 minutes here. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. I will miss David terribly. He will always be with all of us. And now I will read the final poem. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am in 1,000 winds that blow. I am the softly falling snow. I am the gentle showers of rain. I am the fields of ripening grain. I am in the morning hush. I am in the graceful rush of beautiful birds in circling flight. I am the starshine of the night. I am in the flowers that bloom. I am in a quiet room. I am in the birds that sing. I am in each lovely thing, especially my child and grandchildren and his wife and his friends and his partner and Betty and her family and Wayne's stepchildren and their families. Thank you for being here. I am in each lovely thing. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I do not die. This concludes my part of the service. I wish to thank on Wayne's behalf and Josh's and Bobby's behalf and Betty's behalf and Tanya's behalf and Mark and Jennifer. Wish to thank you all for being here. And to celebrate Dave's life, we will gather this summer at some British-themed bar or pub and have a good lunch and some drinks, COVID permitting. If necessary, we'll do it outside, but we'll do it upright. Thank you so much for being here. I have one final thing. We have entrusted David to the hands of God. We now commit his body to the ground, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, in sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life through our Christ, who died, was buried, and rose again for us. To God be glory forever. Amen. Thank you.